Hello, Overranked community. I'm Minze,
And I'm Grime.
and welcome to Grime Time.
So, for the first matchup of the week and of all of Overranked history, we had the matchup of Team PTUS with Captain Dylan the Dude Games and owner Dapper Mafia versus Prodigy with the Captain Dioncy and owner Spartacus. Prodigy overpowered PTUS and ended the series with a controlling record of 4-0. And we will now be speaking with the captain of Prodigy, Dioncy.
All right, we are now here with Diancy, and we are going to ask a few questions for her to answer.
Hi guys, I'm Diancy. I am the captain of Prodigy.
Well, hello, Diancy. We have a few questions, obviously. Now, what did you expect from this matchup, if anything?
Oh, that is a difficult question. I think we were looking for different strategies, especially with the Junkertown map. A lot of teams run very different things. I know the meta for that map is usually like Bastion or Double Sniper, but there's been a lot of introduced metas for that map now with the Brigitte coming into play. So we were more along the lines just curious to see what our adversaries were going to play against us.
Well, that was great, but how did your team prepare for this matchup against PTUS? Like, any strategies that you knew they were going to run or something like that? Just don't say them aloud, but how did you guys prepare for a game against their playstyle?
Lots of scrimming. I know that we mentioned this before, but Prodigy tends to scrim a lot. We scrimmed before the match, literally before the match. So we had a somewhat of an idea of what they might run, but they did end up surprising us.
Really? Did PTUS give you any? Did they give your team any big major problems, and how did you solve them?
I think we realized that we couldn't take them lightly at all. Not that I'm saying we were going to take them lightly. We just we tend to play casually more than actually try hard as a team. And we had to reevaluate our target focus a few times, think of countering characters. It was refreshing. Made us step up our game.
The overranked community saw a lot of good plays during the game, but overall, who do you think performed the best in your team during the match?
Probably a toss-up between Seraph and Zunshin. I think our DPS on Prodigy do a really good job.
We saw really good coordination from Prodigy, but on a scale of 1 to 10, how good do you think Prodigy's coordination and teamwork is in general, and why?
Oh Lord, I would say an 8. We have pretty good coordination most of the time, but there are a few times where we fall flat. But we are a fairly coordinated team.
Let's see. We saw a lot of solid plays from PTUS, but in your opinion, from their team, who do you think caused the absolute most problems for Prodigy?
Probably Knight. Knight's one of those, and this is an interesting conversation because Knight used to be a part of Prodigy. So we went into things thinking that, Knight can't have changed that much from when he was on Prodigy, for the little bit that he was. And he actually, he gave us a little bit of a challenge. So we had to, basically focus up and work on him.
Well, that's all we have for you, Diancy. Thank you for your time and being here, Diancy. That's all for the questions.
Thanks for having me.
Now that we've had that, let's talk about plays. We did see a lot of plays out of this game, but I feel like what really caught my eyes were plays from Zunshin, Seraphim, Knight, Feel Sad Man, and North. we saw a lot of amazing plays from these guys, but in my opinion, I think the biggest play was probably during the stream. I think we all heard that, just the giant tornado in the background of the
Here we are with Prodigy versus PTUS. You want to introduce?
stream. Just that's a pog champ right there. But we did see some insane plays from people like Seraphim, especially on Horizon Lunar Colony after they capped that first point. We saw him consistently hitting shots on that Mercy every single time. Didn't matter, he was getting the headshots. He was just hitting those body shots, which were just beautiful. I'm jealous. So what were your opinions on Seraphim, Minze?
I think Seraphim had a huge role in guaranteeing the win for Team Prodigy. Seraphim overall had some good plays on Widow and McCree. However, I think he could have swapped off to other heroes during the game to help his team in certain bits.
Yeah, but yeah, the other heroes could have definitely helped, but it still worked. But for the next person that I thought was performing very well would be Feel Sad Man. A lot of people, I feel like, didn't really give him the attention he deserved. I saw him, he was just going in there making space for his team, you know, swinging that big old hammer of his, you know, getting the big shatters. One very notable play was in Ilios, in Ilios Ruins, where he hid behind the corner of the middle area and waited for the whole entire lineup of PTUS to just walk in there, and he just got the shatter on every single person. They all died. But that wasn't the only play. We did see some great other things from him.
Yes, although PTUS took the loss in this week's matchup, they definitely had a resistance to the force known as Prodigy, demonstrating some good plays by players such as Yeston, who showed off his promising Brigitte play. This may be the first record of a support player absolutely popping off in the overranked community.
Of course. We know that Baguette, Swedish lady, is very skill based, and you know, you just got to be a god at her, and Yeston really showed that. And even though Prodigy did completely destroy PTUS, we still saw some very nice plays from players from PTUS, such as North and Knight. Even though that they were under pressure of losing, they still made some plays. We saw a really good play by North on Horizon Lunar Colony, where he basically held the whole entire point single-handedly by getting those four kills with the left click button. And even we saw Knight, the Widow plays like on the start of Junkertown, where he just grappled in, got an opening pick, and then the Junkrat right next to him, point blank, but he still managed to get the pick on that Junkrat.
Especially looking at all these plays, in all honesty, although definitely Knight and North had some insane moments, dude, but I think Seraphim was the definite MVP of the match for the amount of space and the amount of opening picks he got for his team to secure the win against PTUS. But anyways, that's going to be all for Prodigy versus PTUS. On to our next matchup. We had Submerge Academy versus the Choke Pokers.
Go Choke Pokers! Our next matchup, we had Submerge Academy with owner Minze and captain Running Wolf against the Choke Pokers with owner and captain Pepperoni Mafia. The Choke Pokers did end up winning the match with a close game of 4-0. It's a pretty close game in favor of the Choke Pokers, and we now will be interviewing both Running Wolf and Dapper Mafia.
All right, we are now here with the captain of Submerge, Running Wolf, and we are going to ask him a few questions. Running Wolf, would you like to introduce yourself briefly?
Hey everybody, I'm Running Wolf. I play for Submerge Academy. I'm the captain, DPS main, but I flex. And all right, go ahead, shoot.
All right, first question. What did you really expect from this matchup against the Choke Pokers?
So, to be perfectly honest, I mean, our goal number one is always to win. Although we do have a plat average, it was probably around, I'd say probably close to like 2.7k, 2.8. I knew coming in that it would be a difficult match. And so one of my biggest focuses, while it is to win, was to also work on improving for future games. And I thought it was a really great opportunity for these guys to see what it would be like to play against a team, you know, of diamond level at least.
Question 2. How did your team really prepare for this matchup? Like any thing you did particular in scrims or anything?
We regularly scrimmed. We went over, you know, just a lot of the standard stuff. You know, tracking alts, making callouts, positioning, who would play what, being able to, having some of the players too, having them work on trying to be able to flex a little bit more and adapt to those situations. And ultimately, my goal, like I said, is to focus on that long-term game. And one thing I'd have to say that I really like about my team compared to some teams that I've been on is that they have really good, they support each other really well in that mental and emotional aspect. Now it's just a matter of translating that into the actual gameplay.
All right, our third question, which is, we're now gonna go over the topic of what happened during the match. So our third question is, what was the main problem caused by choke pokers, and how could have you and your team prevented it in the first place?
So one of the main issues that we had dealing with choke pokers was, one, we lacked the coordination that they had. And that is one thing too. It's like we got a slightly newer team, and when you have a newer team that's also of lower SR, there are a lot of, one thing I've noticed is that there are a lot of personalities that haven't quite gotten that level of boldness that comes with being high plat, and then when you start to come into diamond. And so you look at some of these players, they're almost a little too hesitant, and it causes them to lose focus when you get caught up in those big battles sometimes. Because there were moments too where when we did come together, we were able to either hold choke pokers or even be able to actually do something against them, even despite the fact that we were lower SR, which told me that we have a lot of potential in the team. It's just a matter of building up some of that confidence and coordination.
I see. Our fourth question is, was there a big problem team-wise? I know you went over the communication problem, but if so, what was it, and how could it have been prevented in general?
Well, one of the main issues is that we don't have a definitive shot caller. Typically, I'm the one that does the shot calling because I have the most experience and I am the captain. However, it's not exactly optimal due to the fact that I'm a DPS main, and you typically don't want your DPS calling the shots because they don't always get a feel or a full view of the field. And so it causes a lot of unorganized communication when, you know, you got a couple people saying things and then nobody knows exactly who to follow. So I think one of the things I'm going to be working on is seeing who is to work on getting somebody to become one of our primary shot callers, and then also to encourage a little bit more communication from some of the other players so that we're not at a loss if our shot caller is down.
See, this is more of overall performance now. We're kind of going over that topic. Despite Submerge being the underdogs clearly in this matchup, we did see some pretty nice plays from your team. And in your opinion, who do you think performed the absolute best on Submerge Academy?
It's a little difficult to say. I think we all had good points. We all had bad points. I guess, I don't like to toot my own horn. I think that I had some of the better plays, but one of the biggest issues that we came in with was not really having a true main tank, and that kind of made it a little bit difficult because we had some people flexing on the roles they weren't entirely comfortable with, and it was very short notice when when one of our main tank prospects had left. So I feel like to some degree, some players weren't really given the chance to shine at what they're best at. But there were moments too where I felt like Grandpa had a good performance. I felt, Chris was doing well on calling out like Discord and calling out. He was. If anything, Chris has been making decent call outs. Not necessarily the best, but I'm thinking about working on building his shot calling. But as far as killing things and ultimately making most of the plays, I feel like it's a little bit built around me, and that is one of the things I want to change, because I was telling them, actually, this is a little insight into our conversations during the game, or like, well, not during the game, but in between games, that a lot of times it felt like players, some of the players couldn't handle themselves in alone. Like they weren't able to necessarily handle themselves personally. Like, so like if one person got, taken out, it felt like the team would kind of fall apart. And a lot of times, like, it would be me as the last, one of the last three people standing. And so I think it does come down a little bit to building up the individual skill in order to bring it into that team coordination. I felt in general that the Choke Pokers had a lot more individual skill per player than some of ours. I think that a lot of our players, it's more just inexperience and maybe not necessarily knowing what the right things to do are in situation. There's a lot of game sense issues. Personally, I feel like Grandpa and Envy, well, Envy didn't necessarily get to play DPS as much as he would have liked to, and I would, I'm working on that with him too. I do want to see like some of that flexibility, being able to, like, for instance, MV, he's a tracer player, and which a lot of times I said it's like makes him a built-in Zarya. As long as he learns how to do shields, he can handle himself in those positions. And so it's just a matter of working on those individual skills. I think a lot of my players had decent plays. We had a lot of bad plays. Ultimately, we went down as a team, and that's what really matters in the whole situation. So I don't want to necessarily say I popped off or I was a god or anything like that. I just think that the highest skilled player on the team had the highest performance of the team, and I don't think that's necessarily unreasonable. I just think it's about boosting the performance of the rest of the team.
I see. It was really clear that, Submerge Academy faced very large problems against the Choke Pokers. Probably weren't able to solve most of them, but who do you think most of those problems were actually caused by on the Choke Poker side?
Personally, and I said this to my team as well, was that it wasn't one particular person on TCP that I felt was like overwhelming us. I really think it came down to the coordination. It's not to say that Dapper and the other DPS didn't have decent performances. It's more of a matter that my team necessarily didn't coordinate very well, didn't call out situations that should have been taken care of, or we became so focused on one thing that we ended up dying to another. And that was really just the Choke Pokers exploiting those weaknesses that we had. And I think that really came from more down to team coordination than just one player particularly carrying or anything along those lines. We constantly, there were a lot of times we would get flanked or we'd be hit by the double-sided attack. And it felt like sometimes my team would collapse in those situations. Or the team would get split up, and the back line was gone, and so basically, of course, our tanks or other DPS would die naturally.
See. Well, this is the final question that we have, is that you know, the Overranked community got to see like the debut of Summer Age Academy, and they got to see their teamwork and coordination for the first time. But truly, on a scale of 1 to 10, how good do you think Summer Age Academy's teamwork and coordination during the match was, and why?
I think it fluctuated. If I had to go with an average, I would personally say it was probably about 4. And the reason I'd say that is just because when you stack it up against the team like the choke pokers and everything, I definitely could see the coordination in their attacks and how they use their alts a lot better than how we were using them. And that's just, like I said, I think that's just something we need to work on. I think there are moments, like I said, you know, where we did really well and we were able to put up a decent fight, and it felt like we were up to, you know, maybe we could hit like, you know, like a 6 or a 7. I definitely think we've got a lot of work to do before we really get to that 8 or 9, but I think that we have good tools. And like I said, this team is very supportive. Unlike most teams that I've seen, or like, you know, situations that I've been in, just in like regular, you know, doing pugs or in competitive teams, is this team is probably one of the least toxic teams that I have ever really seen. And I think that there's a lot of potential to make them better. If I had to compare it to like a team in Overwatch League, it's kind of like Florida Mayhem. And I know like Florida Mayhem didn't have a great record, obviously, but they are a very, very like open team. They're very, very compatible with each other. What it really comes down to is that individual skill factor and how well they coordinate. And that's the thing, is I think that what's really nice is the friendship and the bond that this team has, I think has potential to become something better if they're able to really get into it and work at it.
I see. Well, that happens to be all for our questions. Thank you for your time, and thank you for being here, Running Wolf.
My pleasure.
Now that Minze has interviewed Running Wolf, I will now be interviewing the captain of the Choke Pokers, Dapper Mafia.
Hello.
Alright, so Dapper, what was your team expecting when you were coming into this matchup?
We expected the 4-0, but we expected it to be a little bit easier, because they did pretty well on Eichenwald.
Okay.
Other than that, it was pretty much what we expected.
How did your team prepare for the matchup?
We were running tryouts all week, but we played the maps that we were going to play tonight.
Did your team face any problems against Submerge Academy?
The main problem we had was mostly on Eichenwald. We had pretty bad ult management.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how do you think your team did, like, as a whole in the series?
10.
Okay. Were there any players on the side of Submerge Academy that you think performed very well that you had a problem against?
I personally didn't have any problems. I would say the only time one of them really gave me a problem was on Horizon. They swapped to McCree, so I couldn't Reaper ult off the crane anymore.
Right. And in your opinion, who do you think performed the best in your team in the whole series?
It would have to either be Swag or Naughty, because Naughty on Anna had so many really good sleep darts, and then Swag had a lot of good bombs and earth shatters.
And finally, in your opinion, who do you think was the best player on, or the best performing player on Submerge Academy?
Probably Running Wolf.
Alright, well, that's going to be all for the questions, Dapper. Thank you for coming in and answering our questions.
Yep.
Our interviews are now officially out of the way, and we are able to talk about the plays of this week. There was a lot of players that really did catch my eye during the games. These players included Naughty Gentleman, Dapper Mafia, Running Wolf, and of course, Swaggy P.
That is true. We did see some pogger plays by people like Naughty. He was hitting those insanely nice sleep darts, saving his team from a lot of things. Oh, profanity, I'm sorry. We saw Dapper, of course. You know, this man is... I just saw his insane just talent and ability at pressing the Q button. Completely just wipes out the Submerge Academy, just completely bullying those fellas. And we did see on the side of Submerge Academy, Running Wolf, they were losing, but that doesn't mean that he can't make great plays, because we saw this guy hitting some nice headshots on the Widow, and it's like there were some pretty clean headshots. And we have all of those guys, but we also saw Swaggy P, like the actual basketball player, but instead of hitting dunks in the court, he was hitting those diva bombs in the junker towns and the rest of the maps, in fact. Haha. And overall, looking at all of these great plays, we saw him prevent a lot of team fights. We saw him carry some team fights, which to me, I feel like he was an MVP of that match. Don't you agree, Minze?
I absolutely agree with you, actually. I really believe that Swaggy P fully deserves the MVP spot because he really was able to pick up kills, like as you said, with those nice diva bombs. And overall, he really contributed a lot to the Chokebookers in general. In other news, the game between the Catfishers and TM Esports will be delayed to next week. We will also include the Dink Clan Esports versus Tenebris Esports game in next week's Grime Time rather than this one.
Well, big congratulations for Swaggy for the MVP spot, and now that is going to be the end of today's Grime Time, or this week's Grime Time, and the first ever Grime Time. And we'll see you fellas next week.